Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. Every day we get into everything to do with the market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Bitcoin market, knocking on the door of $100,000. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we might cross it during the course of the show. That would be exciting. But whether we do or we don't, loaded up for discussion today, we have a conversation on Bitcoin, all kinds of interesting political news coming through yesterday. We'll touch on all of it and break it down for you. Got Solana breaking all-time high as well at $262, although it's just a little bit lower now as the ETF filings rolled in, and Trump was pressing ahead with crypto council plans, with one objective being the strategic Bitcoin reserve. We've also got the latest on all the rest of the price action on crypto and NFTs, and a discussion on the general state of the market. We've got Legendary and Bread with us today in the co-host seats. We are looking forward to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, everything that we say here is not financial advice because we don't know anything for certain. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Bread, it is Friday. It is the 22nd of November. How are you doing?
Bold of you to go to me first. Getting a little bit of lag here. We're going to try to make this work from a new town inside of Turkey. I may actually switch over at some point to a new network. We'll see. Yeah, things are going well. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Things are looking up. The price just keeps going up. So the prices are high. That typically means we are feeling pretty good. Legendary, when the prices are up, you seem to usually be in a good mood. Any reason to be in an extra good mood today?
Yeah, actually there is. Thank you for asking.
Oh, set you up there. Set you up.
Beautiful setup. Yeah, we talked about the show about Project 89, the AI token I talked about a month ago. And I said on one of the shows, and that's quite interesting actually from a social influence perspective, that it went up from 4 mil to 20 mil when Mark Andreessen posted about it twice. And that basically wasn't a new all-time high back then. It had reclaimed the previous high after that positive comment by Mark Andreessen, again, who is part of A16Z, one of the most significant funds we have in this space. And yesterday, so then the token struggled for a while, went back to 7 mil, managed to reclaim 30 mil at some point. Yesterday, Chillguy posted about that and posted about it again today, and basically took it from 30 mil to 100 mil, record-breaking new all-time high for this token, which is insane because it's actually an effect that comes close to a tier 1 exchange listing or tier 2 exchange listing, when one of the most prominent figures in this space, for meme coins that is, speaks about a token and endorses that. And he did it with a long form post where this is one of the AI plays he is committing on. So that's pretty interesting to observe those effects. And it's wild that Chillguy has more influence than Mark Andreessen when it comes to moving a price.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. I remember when I used to do the show with Thread Guy, he would always, he went on this arc. I think we all collectively went on this arc saying real celebrities are not the real celebrities anymore. Crypto Twitter influencers are the new celebrities, because in the end, no one can move a market like a real celebrity can't move the market in a way like this. And could we be going in a direction where this is the way that you're judged? This is the way your influence is truly judged. Can you move the market that way? Brad, you look like you want to come in.
I was gonna say, I think that comes down to distribution, right? Like that's kind of how a lot of the stuff plays out. If you think about like someone who is traditionally impactful, right? They don't have a one-to-one line to the people that are one click away from deploying a, 100 grand into a coin, right? Whereas like someone like Chillguy, people have been following for months, and they will go on a whim, or they have bots in place to straight up do the thing. Whereas like Michael Jordan tweets something, you're gonna hope that like 5% of those people even know what the hell he's talking about, and then 1% of those have the ability to do anything. So like, I think, the crypto native influencers or personalities have direct distribution to a disproportionate wealth in the space, and like immediate impact, right? And like you can see the impact with Chillguy.
Exactly.
Yeah, one funny addition to that is that there is AI XPT, this agent that we spoke about on the show on Base, that's basically acting like a financial analyst. I think it's not trading in itself, but it's doing quite a lot of great analysis. And then it started to post about another token, about Cobie, I think was the token, and AI XPT, the AI said that the Bonk founder tagged Bonkai is holding 5%. So even AIs now think that Bonkai is the Bonk founder. Found that quite hilarious. And actually, Bonkai responded to that to push back. No, I'm not the founder. Just to clarify that.
What are we doing here, guys? Like, this is just getting onto some deeper and deeper
Bro, it's
level.
spreading. I'm even seeing, so like I'm tapped into like a traditional old head side of Twitter. I'm even seeing some of those people capitulate and like, listen, dudes, I don't do meme coins, but I'm in. And like that guy, like one's DeFi Dojo dude, right? He's been explicitly avoiding all this shit, $100,000, whatever. He's like, all right, I'm in. I bought a meme coin. And he starts going on a thesis about it, whatever. So like the brainworm is spreading.
It is indeed. Look, I think we definitely want to touch on some of the AI stuff a little bit later, but let's get into the main stuff. As usual, today got a lot of stuff to do with Bitcoin, a lot of political positive advancements, a lot of positive news across the board. Love these kind of shows. Let's get into it, starting with the price action first, as always. Starting with Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin is just up 1% at 98.5K. It was I think it went past 99 at one point this morning. Then it's just pulled back just a touch. ETH is up 4% at 3.3K, whereas Solana is up 7%, approaching $260. I think it went just above that a little bit earlier. It did hit an all-time high a bit before. On the meme coin side of things, just quickly, you've got Doge up a couple of percent. You've got Pepe up 9%. Pepe and Mog still reacting very, very strongly when ETH goes up. It's kind of just like a beta play to ETH, it seems, at this point. Whiff's up 4%, Popcat's up a couple of percent, but down at 160, which feels pretty low for Popcat. Not a holder there, just feels a bit low. Mog, as I said, is up 20%. Interestingly, Goat, talking of AI coins, that is down 8%, back beneath $1. A lot of love going to the other AI coins. I guess that mindshare is spreading out a little bit. Rune's Dog is up 5.6%. Zero Bro is up 12.5% to 53 cents. Zero Bro has probably been the biggest beneficiary of more AI mindshare spreading away from Goat. I think people really enjoying that one. Let's get to the headlines themselves. As usual, where are we? Okay, I'm reading off the screen here, Legendary. So I need you to scroll down. Number one, Bitcoin, as I said, it's approaching 100K. A couple of bits of news that we were going to touch on with respect to that. We're going to talk about Crypto Council and Strategic Reserve. Interesting news reported by Reuters yesterday, where they said Trump looks like he's going to be getting this Crypto Council in place so that they can advise more closely on crypto policy. We also had Gary Gensler resigning, which obviously feeds into this bullish sentiment. We had the Schwab CEO saying that he felt silly for not participating with crypto and that they will be adding crypto. So all kinds of stuff going on there, coalescing to create.
Warren Buffett next. That's the goal, right? He's the one that's been holding out on. And
the final boss. Warren Buffett is the final boss. Brad, the final boss has silenced you. You have frozen as that happened. You cannot say that Buffett needs to fall. I'm sure he'll be back with us in just a second. Getting in some notable sales.
To capitulate too.
Okay, Brad. Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit, Brad. You might need to leave and join us. Oh no, you're back with us now. Scroll down just a touch, Legendary, and we've got the notable sales where some CryptoPunks selling pretty high. The floors above 35 ETH. This CryptoPunk with a pipe and 3D glasses off for 75 ETH. Legendary, on the NFT side, what is going on?
Absolutely. Let's take a look. The trend from yesterday is kind of continuing. Another red-ish day for NFTs. Bored Apes down 2.7%, 12.7 ETH floor for them, giving back almost all of the gain that they had last week, only up 6%. Pudgy's down another 1.5%, 11.5 ETH floor for them. Still up over the week, still up 16%. Azuki's actually up 1.3%, up 4.6% over the last 7 days, 4.6 ETH floor for them. Milady's up another 9% over the last 24 hours, 6.2 ETH floor for them. So definitely doing the best out of the majors. Also wanted to quickly check in with Doodles to see what was going on there and if they managed to keep the new high that they had reached at around 2.8 ETH. They did not. They are down 10% over last week, down 1.4% over the last 24 hours, and back essentially to what is a 2 ETH floor.
Like it. Okay, that is good stuff. Just a few other bits of news from around the space. We have, let me find.
I think you should talk about some of the punks some more. Have you guys been seeing the ambition buys on the timeline?
No, what's that?
So punks specifically, you mentioned some of their notable sales, but like I've seen at least 3 separate people who have rotated meme coin and meme coin profits into specific punk sales. And Zeneca was talking about like, hey, I'm finally like browsing the website again. Like people are starting to get that like we'd covered this whatever a couple months ago. Like our punks and ambition buy like of you guys personally and like just the space broadly. It's kind of showing that it is. And these are people that are like ordinals dudes. Like I saw one of them was Billy. He's like, finally got my punk. I encourage, ETH heads to go over and buy, look at OMB, look at pups, look at all this shit. But like people are looking to acquire some grails here.
Yeah, great observation. I think that's definitely true. Like it. Very, very bullish. I think people always ask the question like, will they remain an ambition buyer, especially when people are on different chains, right? Like if you're an ordinals person and you love Bitcoin so much, will you come back? And it looks like they will, whether you make your money on Solana or Bitcoin. People still like the punks. A bit of a quick roundup from everything else going on in space. As we said, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler resigns from his position. The Schwab CEO announced entrance to spot crypto markets and admits embarrassment for not personally participating. Interesting metrics here. ETH dropped out of the top 5 protocols by 24-hour fees. It was all Solana stuff above it. That was pretty interesting to see. Zero Bro AI chat has been created to allow holders to ask Zero Bro anything. And FTX will begin their distributions no later than March 2025. So that could be a reasonable stimulus into the market. On the gaming side, Xbox blockchain game Off the Grid announces Coinbase Ventures as a strategic investor. And finally, this was a strange one last night that I was like getting ready to go to bed and saw Andrew Tate was streaming live Sol meme coin trading and on Photon. And it seemed pretty absurd, to be honest, just throwing money in. But I guess the interesting aspect of it is there seems to be this live streaming trend where people are trading live as well as like trading live, streaming live, kind of making calls live as well, indicating that people should be buying things and then they're going to sell, but they're going to wait for their viewers to buy. Seems pretty illegal / dubious, to say the minimum. Legendary. Have you seen this trend? Have you been watching any? What's going on there?
Yeah, I actually had this post out yesterday where I was a bit worried about what was going on. Where is it? There it is. Basically, Andrew Tate streaming, Rasma reacting to it, and my post on that was, what part of the cycle is it when naked men live stream and not a naked man's live stream, and comment on that. But on a more serious note, there was also a wallet investigation on Andrew Tate's stream, and the allegations there were that there was a wallet that is ultimately was funded by Tate's main wallet and is close to his team, and that bought and dumped one of the tokens that he had shilled on the stream for a profit of quote unquote only 250K, which kind of led CT to ask the question, what's going on if Tate needs to do a pump and dump stream to just make $250,000, given how much he loves to flex his net worth?
Reasonable question. Is there, okay, we've obviously got the main headlines. We've got super bullish stuff to talk about as it comes to core crypto. But I think this is interesting too, because on some level, we're all creators on the internet and we're all trying to figure out the best way to go about it. Brad, what do you think? Like, where's the line when it comes to streaming and trading? Like, clearly there's some type of product market fit there where people want to watch, but what's the way to do this if people are going to do it? Because it feels like people don't know what the guardrails are or what the guidelines are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for financial legal advice from me, that's not going to happen right now. But I will say that, like, I think it's worthwhile observing
for instinctive advice.
Social. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. I mean, just don't do obvious pump and dumps, I would say, is one. But like, I think it's interesting to see, and maybe this is like a predictive of the future, like the social dynamics of this thing, because like it is turning into, like, we had like online text-based social dynamics of this with like Wall Street bets and like, open like options trading on Robinhood and like flexing your P&L, all that shit. Like now it's moving over into the next phase of it, which is streaming, right? Like actually showing this up, participating, being part of the community, all that shit, which I think is kind of just like the arc we saw with just like internet social broadly, right? Like it was originally like chat boards, do whatever, and then eventually you moved over to like streaming, and now like, yeah, streaming itself, short videos, all that stuff was popular. So I don't know, maybe it's just like, is this stuff gonna last a little bit longer than we think because it's just like a social norm at this point? Because like obviously they can't go after literally everyone that's doing this stuff because it's proliferating at such a pace that like, how do you go after 150 people on, whether it's on pump.fun streaming, whether it's like explicitly on like Twitch streaming, like it's everywhere. Maybe it'll just be kind of normal for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. My reflection, and I definitely want to hear Legendary's thoughts as well, is it's kind of like with every iteration of technology, we just get closer and closer to the source. So, I mean, on some level, when you buy something and then you go to tweet about it, that's kind of the same as showing people something as you buy it. And it's similar but the only difference is the time lag. Like in the end, the communication that you're doing is exactly the same. You are communicating to other people what you have bought. There's just a bigger time lag before you do the transaction. And then by the time you've written it on Twitter, whereas when you're just, it seems like the technology just keeps moving us closer and closer to you being able to find out sooner about the buy. And so
I think one thing I would say, like it kind of reminds me of like spam, like the word spam on like blockchains or whatever. It's like you don't know what it is, but like you can identify it if you see it. Like you can't describe it. This kind of feels similar to me, where like it feels kind of gross, but I can't just say like where's the line of like where it is illegal, whatever. It's just like it kind of feels like you probably shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, Legendary, very keen to hear your thoughts here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think ultimately it doesn't make too big of a difference, because take Project 89 and take Bonkai's post on that. There's people who have notifications on. There was one trader who basically aped, based on the post, had notifications on for that. I think made $250,000 just on being fast to trade that post. And it's not about seeing Bonkai's buy, which I would assume would have happened before his post. I don't know that. This is just an rational assumption that I'm making, because I don't think his intention is to make his entry price 2x or 3x of what it would have been before his post. So what matters more is when the communication gets public. And this, if you reach a certain influence, becomes very hard, because we've seen this discussion on X. Shouldn't you talk about a sub 1M market cap? Or shouldn't you talk about a sub 100K? Because you will, if you have a bit of reach, you will push that. I'm pretty certain if Brett would post a token that hasn't bonded on pump.fun, given that he doesn't shield tokens at all, that token would bond basically the next minute. And then the thing is that I don't think you can make this distinction by market cap, really. It's more like, what do you do with the position? What do you do with what's the intention behind that? Is it the intention to post and hope the community pumps it and you dump on them? Or is it like Bonkai sees it as a more long-term hold and he will sell after a longer period of time? So I think intention matters way more than the market cap of the things you post, because Bonkai is a great example that he can post about a $30 million ticket and take that to 100. So it's not always easy, like, to find out what the right way is to deal with stuff. It's something that I've been thinking a lot now that I started to talk more about memes on my own timeline. But I think what matters most is really the intention behind that. And then it kind of also defines for me personally how I do my content. Like taking the example of, what was it, Justice for Lucas, the ferret that I bought because Jen posted about it on the flight. And I had a very strong feeling that this will crash basically at any given moment. So I just bought, I sold, and then it already dropped and was basically dead. And this is when I posted my P&L on that, when it was like pretty obvious this token is dead. There's like nobody in their right mind would see this post and it shows my buy at 400K and selling at 8 mil. And then it was down to, I don't know, 1 mil or a couple 100K again. Nobody would see like, oh, this is a good time to FOMO in right now. So yeah, I think intention matters more than anything, but it's not always easy to find out the right way to talk about these things if you want to talk about them.
Yes, I agree. And I think the streaming aspect although in essence it's the same thing, it does just make it more complicated. I think it definitely makes it more complicated. But look, I'm interested from the social perspective and from the content creator perspective. If that's what people want, I wonder how many people will go down that route. There have been people asking us, like, will we do some type of trading aspect on the show? Will we do some kind of meme coin challenges on the show? And we're just like trying to figure out, like, what would be the way to do it if we were to do it? Does that even fit necessarily? Is there a way to do it? It's a hard one to come to a concrete conclusion on. I take Saylor's been listening to a bunch to Michael Saylor recently, and in general, his principles are: don't lie, cheat, or steal. Don't lie, cheat, or steal, and you'll probably be okay. So maybe that's a helpful, fundamental set of rules. Just a couple other bits of news before we get into the main headlines and some further discussion that I had not included. There was one other big runner. I can see Kashmir in the YouTube comments caught. It was this one called Casey. I'm going to share Tyler's tweet on it. I think that was helpful. Casey was the runner of the night on Solana, soaring 69,000% to a $69 million market cap in just 12 hours. This was done by an artist who seems to be more amenable to crypto than the Chillguy artist, and seems to be like, they create animated shorts. They're actively promoting the coin and seem to be down to create some more stuff. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was the Rect token by OSF, Rect Drinks, and that crew has opened at $50 million. That claim went live earlier. If you have a Chillguy NFT, or if you participated in the drink sale or got any of those points in any way, you can claim your things and sell it. And it opened up $50 million market cap. So not bad at all. Pretty good stuff. 2x off the local bottom. So those are the other bits of news. Legendary, any comments, any final thoughts there on the other bits of news?
Yeah, on Casey specifically, I found it quite interesting because it looks so organic that after Chillguy, you have now another artist popping up who is so crypto friendly and is doing great videos on how it is like to be a newbie on that. And I'm probably talking against my own backs because I'm holding Casey, but I think it is a very well executed marketing play because these videos take time to produce and they clearly are pre-produced. I think that someone also made the point that the Casey ticker on the profile of the artist was in his profile, I think already like 10 days ago. So seems like such an organic story, but I think it's a well executed marketing play. Again, doesn't stop the token from doing a 69,000% performance, which sounds really absurd if you say it out loud, over the last 24 hours. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Right, want to go to Bread. Did you see this, the tweet, Bread, that I shared with you about someone kind of going to war with Solana? And I thought it raised a pretty interesting analysis. So do you want to just set that up, share what you think, share what you're thinking here?
Yeah. So I'll give a quick synopsis of what the tweet is for people who hadn't seen it, and it's basically someone just chastising the current arc of the Solana meme coin trading environment, where it's becoming more and more professional, or the edge to actually be profitable is becoming harder. MEV is increasing, fees are increasing. It's basically just competition broadly for being successful in the environment is going up, and he's saying this is exactly what happened with.
Okay.
Exit liquidity is now gone.
Brad, your audio is cutting out, my man. Don't worry about it. I'll take it from here. You were cutting out a bit. I'll take it from there. Yeah, in essence, the point that TK is making, who's kind of an OG crypto person, is that Solana isn't as fast and cheap as you think. And I think this is one of these like cognitive, what's the word? Is it cognitive dissonance things where you've been told so much in your head that Solana is cheap and fast that you actually believe that Solana is cheap and fast. Solana can't be that cheap and fast because you have to use a trading bot in order to get the execution that you want, and you are having to pay quite a lot. So in his second tweet, he shared. Now I think there's something. What was the figure quoted? I think he said there's like 500 million that's been paid in Here we go. Solana's quickly entering
the total bot fees. Yep.
Proven by $500 million paid to trading bots, the average priority and bribery fee paid, the exorbitant amount of MEV, the requirement of needing to use tools and bundle analysis and whatever else to effectively play at the table. Like, this is just not as cheap as you once thought. If you've used Photon or anything else and you're actually paying attention, the slippage is automatically set to 20%. And I saw a lot of people get annoyed at him saying, okay, we'll just turn the slippage down. It's like, okay, yes, you can, but that is the default setting that they want you to use, or they're suggesting to you to use in order to try to get the best execution. So that's a high slippage, and you're having to pay a bribery fee on top. It's relatively expensive, but no one's really talking about it. So I wanted to bring that up here because I know a lot of people will be trading this stuff. And I think it's pretty costly. Legendary, you're doing this stuff all the time. Me and you've spoken about this personally as well. What do you think on this? What could be a solution, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, I said it and I posted about that before, and I think TK had a great example I quickly want to break down before I go into my full
yeah, this is great.
He has the example: $500 Photon trade, Photon fee $5, default priority fee $2.05, default bribe $5.09, default slippage 20%, total of $12.14, 2.5% of trade value, and also basically with the making the point that if you do 20 trades, that a break even, you go broke on the fees alone. So if you are someone who's trading a lot, which I certainly am, I have an insane trading volume compared to the profits that I have. I just found my trading style works best for me if I trade a lot, which a lot of people would say it's over trading, but it works just better for me. And you have to factor that in. It's essentially the same as with ETH. JPEG gas fees were never the issue in the JPEG season. It was just part of the price building. And I think with memes, people are not too aware of that, or they just don't care too much because nobody's chasing the marginal return of buying a position and trading it for a 20% like gain. Everyone is in for way, way bigger multiples. And I think this is the main reason why Photon can charge this obscene fees. And to a certain extent, you also need them. I mean, Dees made the point that he has reduced his slippage on Photon to, I think, 0.5 to 5.5%, depending on what he's trading. But if you want to buy something super early, you will not get an order through with 5% slippage. If you want to buy a dip because there's 1 wick down, you will not get a trade through with 5% slippage, and definitely not with the default priority fee. You will have to spend way, way more than that in priority fees to get that through. And it's essentially the same concept that we've seen with ETH. And probably the trading would be cheaper on L2s now if you consider how much these tools like Photon and others are charging. You can make the point that with Azura, or I can't remember, Ape, I think is the one that Moritz, prominent trader himself, Ape Terminal is using. You can make the point that you're at least farming some sort of airdrop with that. And you will, if this airdrop will be successful, you will make some of your fees back, or maybe more than you have spent in an ideal case. But I think it just goes back to the point that gas fees, as much as people love to complain about them, were never the issue. It was just more apparent on ETH because the gas wars took it to such an absurd level that you were paying multiple times of the mint price of an NFT in gas fees to be able to mint that. And this is why nobody cares about that, because it's 5.5% of the trade value. And if you trade less than a $500 trade, if you trade 0.1 Sol to buy something in the trenches at 10K market cap, your fees go up to 20, 30, 40% maybe even, which is really absurd, but it's still far away from what we've been paying on ETH.
Yeah, and it makes me think that the actual core difference here, and Brad, this is something, kind of an extension of the conversation we were having yesterday, but it's a slightly different thing. The core difference here is just the user experience. And I saw someone else tweet the exact same thing. I was thinking the MetaMask experience and the fact that when you transact on ETH, it actually comes up to ask you, do you want to pay this? This is what the gas will cost. Do you want to pay it? And then you have to see it. And then you have to think, oh God, why is it so damn expensive? I hate this chain. Why is it making me do this? Whereas on Solana, it's charging you a lot. It's just not telling you there and then. Like, although you've all pre-selected it, you don't have the experience of needing to see, oh no, on the $500 trade, I'm actually giving up this percentage, or I now need to double select. It just does it. Any reflections there?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two components to that. Hopefully you guys can hear me. The one is like, yes, there's a lot of people have been calling into like, why hasn't this materialized on L2s? And a lot of it is because of like the token approval, token swap, plus also gas costs. Like all that stuff is user friction, whereas you don't have that with Solana right now, right? You click a button, you can DCA in, you can do whatever, it's just instant, whatever on the back end, so you don't observe it. And so the other thing is like, so one, yes, to your point, that is a friction point, and like any extra click, any extra decision point is a barrier to like deploying the capital. As you said, I curl up whenever I see a $30 gas price on a 6-figure position, which is ridiculous to think about, but your brain does it anyway. Basically, it's like, that's a meal, that's a whatever. The second thing is like what Legendary is talking about and where these fees are going is it calls into question the sustainability of all this stuff. And it's happened with everything that we've done whenever there's been a hype cycle, whether it's ordinals, runes, whatever, right? That got crazy, gets productized, money eventually gets siphoned out from the people that are inflowing new capital to either professionals or external actors or miners or MEV bots, whatever. Eventually that money stops pouring in. And once that, Friendtech, perfect example, right? There were fees that were taking place, but the craze was so high, people didn't pay attention. Eventually that new liquidity stopped coming in, everything stagnated, and then it starts going down. We're going to see the same thing here, but the addressable market is much, much, much bigger because it is simple. You have Moonshot, you have whatever. So you have people that are totally outside of crypto space that are just like throwing $10, $20, $30 at it. But eventually those people run out. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, I think this is the right thing to keep an eye on. I think this is definitely a thing to keep an eye on. And actually, I think it is Ethereum's opportunity, not being biased here, just like, I just think it's an opportunity for ETH for one of the L2s to get their act together and cultivate this type of atmosphere that can actually compete, where it can maybe be cheaper, and it can genuinely be cheaper and faster. And maybe create a culture that would facilitate that, because the Solana culture is definitely encouraging this activity at the moment. So
this is why you see some of the bigger traders do more of the perp trading. If you have a coin with enough open interest to do that, and just a funding rate that allows for that, it's probably cheaper if you swing trade with 7, 8 figures, high 6 figures to do that with perps on the coins than to actually do it spot on. Certainly not on Photon. Maybe with the bigger positions you can do it also on Jupiter. But if you want to trade some of the smaller meme coins and have something with a lot of open interest, or have something where there's not that much open interest or not even that much liquidity, quite frankly, when you want to trade a big position, you need to take leverage to assume that big position. This is where you see a lot of volume on the perp side of things.
Like it. Yeah, good point. Look, let's get into the main stuff today. It feels like the Bitcoin news and the Bitcoin activity is kind of not resonating with too many people, maybe because not enough people are holding it. But Legendary, there's some big Bitcoin developments leading to Bitcoin approaching 100K now. Do you want to just take us through them, explain what's been happening?
Yeah, absolutely. We have Bitcoin at, as you said, at 99K and very close to 100K. And we have a pretty positive political situation. I feel like we touched on many of the things that have been going on, but Reuters had this great article that kind of summarizes all of the political crypto positive stuff that comes from Trump's idea of what he thinks, what he sees as a crypto friendly administration. So I will go through that. First of all, there is going to be a crypto advisory council. There's been talks with companies or people from companies like Ripple, Kraken, Circle, who want to have a seat on that council. Another thing that is interesting to add to that is that I think we reported on it in the Roundup that Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong also recently had met with Trump on that. There's no more information on what has been discussed there. Also, the Circle CEO told the New York Times that he wants to be on this very council. That council is likely to be housed under the White House's National Economic Council, which puts it in a pretty powerful position to work on policy for cryptos, for digital assets. Another thing to add on this council is that apparently there seems to be a crypto tsar role that will also be created for that. And this will be the person likely to lead this council. And the Trump team is apparently in the process of vetting the right candidate for that. The other thing where we have reported on quite extensively is, again, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, where it's also shaping up from the media coverage that this seems to become an important agenda point in Trump's crypto approach. Adding to that, we had the news that you mentioned at the top of the show, be that Gary Gensler posted on X that he will be stepping down as the SEC chair on January 20th. So on the inauguration date, went to explain a bit on the work that he did there. But I think the main point is that the market definitely had liked this news a lot. And then a bit of FOMO coming into that from the institutional side, with the Schwab CEO, $7 trillion asset management, saying that he feels silly for not buying crypto and announcing that their company will enter spot crypto markets. So very, very positive outlook from the regulatory side of things, plus institutional FOMO being talked about publicly, is forming quite a nice setup. And I'm having CoinMarketCap open for the entire show and waiting to see if we can announce 100K. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look like it. We're still edging at 99K and waiting for that momentum to hit 100.
On thanks for the summary. That's very helpful. I think there's just so many little bits of good information in there. It's like from every single angle, things are starting to sound very positive. What do you think about the next few weeks or so? Sorry, what do you think about the fact that it seems, at least from the attention perspective, that Bitcoin is not being as celebrated as other stuff? Do you think people on crypto Twitter are sidelined? Do you think people, I mean, we know probably the institutions are sidelined at this point and they're trying to figure out how to get in. Do you think it's under-owned compared to other things? What's your sense there?
I think it's maybe a bit of a misperception of our bubble that there's not a lot of talk going on about BTC. If you take a look at the Kaito mindshare chart, BTC is actually dominating, getting 20% of the mindshare. Interesting side note on that is that Solana has flipped ETH's mindshare, which is 11.87% for Solana, 11.1% for ETH, which is probably a result of Solana hitting its all-time high. And ETH was leading quite comfortably. This is the last 24 hours. If we look at the data for the last 30 days, there we go. BTC's mindshare was at 16%, so that has increased another 20% to 20% now. ETH was at 9.5%, and Solana was behind at 8%. So definitely Bitcoin being the one to gain a significant additional mindshare as one interesting takeaway, even if my timeline doesn't look like that, but also definitely noteworthy that Solana on that mindshare chart has flipped ETH.
I like it. I was in a Bitcoin. Sorry, Brett, do you want to just go?
No, I was just going to say, do you think it's a byproduct of where the wealth generation is happening this cycle? Because typically, right, the flow, we've always said like, oh, Bitcoin's always a start, and then it goes from there to Ethereum, and then it goes from Ethereum to alts, and then blah, 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 all the way down the chart, right? But everyone has noticed that we've had a distinct shift this time where memes have been popping off like crazy ahead of all of this Bitcoin stuff, right? So like, yes, Bitcoin isn't being touted as heavily going into its second now all-time high. We've already like had that like phase, and it's because like, you know, the money's being made elsewhere, has been made elsewhere. It's not water falling down that chart as traditionally as it used to.
I think this is a very good point, and I think it's also unit bias coming into play. Because if you think about it, if Bitcoin hits 100K, or not, when Bitcoin hits 100K, a 1% move is a 1K move in price, and that's a lot. Like a 1% move is a 1K move in price. If ETH were to move 1K, that's either 33% up, and then it's at 4K, or it's down to 2K. So that gets to a number where there's not a lot of people, I don't have the stats on that, probably Funky as his hand up will know more on that, who are a whole coiner who own one entire Bitcoin. And I think unit bias is definitely coming into play with that, because even if you I don't know, by ordinals, by runes, and then you deal with those 0.001 BTC amounts, it's actually a lot of money in dollar terms. I think it gets to a point where it's not realistic for people to own an entire Bitcoin. It's maybe also not the aspiration to do that. It's more so that you may make price in Solana. I think Solana is nice to do your math with. If you take it at $200 or $250 for Solana, $1,000, it's something that you can kind of wrap your head around. If you have a specific target, you can figure out how much Solana you need to make to buy a CryptoPunk. But you're not gonna, you're not gonna do the math in your head, at least not if you're like native in Solana, to decide and be like, I need 0.3 BTC to buy this car or to buy this house in Japan or whatever it is. So definitely unit bias also coming into play. Plus, as you perfectly said, Brett, a question of where the wealth generation is happening, and that's definitely on the meme side of things.
My one quick thought on this before we go to Funky is, I get the sense people are making a lot of money, but they don't necessarily want to move it into Bitcoin. I have been moving stuff into Bitcoin as the cycle has been going on from the top of the year, but I just get the sense that maybe it is because of the unit bias legendary that there's people don't want to do it. Even if it's a bit, they don't want to do it. That's my feeling. Funky, come in on this. What's your thought on the latest bits of positive news coming out of the political arena as it relates to Bitcoin or anything else relating to Bitcoin at the moment?
Jam fam, yeah, a couple different things. So I kind of knew about this crypto council announcement because in the Blockchain Association members chat, there was, and the day before, late in the afternoon, they said something about, we're hearing that the president is going to put together some kind of council about crypto policy. So I wasn't surprised to hear that news, which again, very big and great. I think that that's wonderful. To Legendary's point about, the stats, I haven't looked them up in a long time, but I do remember that even if you owned 1/10 of a Bitcoin a couple of years ago, you were in the top 1% of like Bitcoin holders. So most people, to the broader point of the conversation, do not hold a whole lot of Bitcoin. And as a whole coiner, I would say, yes, it is something that should be an aspiration for everybody. It is the apex predator. It's the king coin until, Bread's FUD plays out on the timeline and AI or quantum computing breaks SHA-256, or we get to a place where it's only transaction fees and government's going to have to subsidize it. Bitcoin is going to be the king of the block. So I would say if you're smart, and I've said this before, I'm going to take half my profits when we get into like the banana zone part of the cycle. Half will just go straight to BTC, not even caring what the price of BTC will be. Half will go to stable coins just to load up in the bear and build up some other bags. But yeah, I mean, at this point, my wife and I have talked about it. We are not going to sell any Bitcoin at all. We had thought, oh, maybe this is the cycle we'll finally, quote unquote, take profits on Bitcoin. Because we've been buying pretty consistently since at least 2020 and had some from before that in the previous run. So yeah, I think that you just got to let all this play out. I mean, I just saw a prediction the other day saying something like that they think Bitcoin will be $500,000 per coin by the end of 2027. And I think that goes hand in hand with what Saylor was saying on the space with Van Eck, that the halving cycle is probably broken at this point. Like if we're going to get nation state FOMO and it becomes a strategic reserve asset for many countries around the globe, the halving cycle isn't going to have the kind of impact that it used to have, and the volatility will smoothen out. I mean, it's a logarithmic chart. You can see it already happening across time. So yeah, bullish Bitcoin.
Thanks for that perspective, Funky, as always. Interesting on the strategy, the half and half strategy, stablecoins and Bitcoin. I'm actually doing something quite similar, but just as we go. But then to Legendary's unit bias point, if the number's too small, then I don't bother. I don't bother with the Bitcoin buy. I'll buy Sol instead. So like, you're completely right. Like, say the profit was $1,000 from some trade, and I want to put 500 in stables. I'm not going to buy $500 of Bitcoin. I'm just not going to do it. So then I buy 2 Sol instead with the other 2. Whereas if the profit is much bigger, I'll do the Bitcoin. So it's just, yeah, you're right. It's interesting how that stuff works. Any final reflections on that before we talk about Sol a bit more?
It reminds me a lot of when you guys were having the conversation about ordinals and how difficult it was to price things in terms of fiat when you're looking at it and you see a small number because of the unit bias. But again, I still think even if it's 0.001, it's still worth collecting. Accumulate.
Yeah, I know you would think that, Funky. I know you would think that. Appreciate the take. Right, we've got 8 minutes left for today. I think the biggest other news coming from yesterday was the Solana stuff. So it wasn't just Bitwise who filed for a Solana ETF. There were other filings as well, but this was the news that Solana ETFs appear like they'll become a crypto asset manager. Bitwise has filed for a Solana ETF amid increased optimism about the SEC approvals under Donald Trump administration. The spot ETF, if approved, would give investors exposure to Sol, the fourth biggest cryptocurrency, which we know Sol is now, it did go past its previous all-time high around $263, I think it was, just pulled back just a touch now. But people are, it just looks very, very positive for Solana. I don't know if there's more to comment on specifically here. The question is more maybe to do with allocations. Oh, sorry, Brett, did you want to come in?
I was just going to say, I think this is a good, this dovetails really well with what we were talking about on Wednesday, where Funky's talking about maybe potential catalysts that are coming down the road, right? Like this is like the news is now, everyone's getting excited, everyone's buying, maybe now a little bit thinking ETF. It's not, but this thing's not going to land tomorrow, right? You need Trump to get in office. You need to actually go through the approval, get the futures trading market for Solana, blah, 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 blah. So again, mental model, okay, chuck this stick down the road and no catalyst potentially coming once we had the Bitcoin, reserves coming for structural buy on Bitcoin. And now we potentially have a Solana catalyst, an ETF getting approved for structural buy pressure applied there. So it's just okay, good mental note, throw that shit down the line that this thing is coming or potentially is coming. And that's generally bullish if it outweighs all the negative stuff that's going on in that same time frame. It's good for a mental model. The one thing I will say about the all-time high is people may have have a little confusion, haven't we already crossed this bridge for Solana? And it's there's been two things, right? Now they have the per token all-time high. It's back to and above that number because of Solana inflation. It's actually been above its market cap all-time high since March, right? It crossed that thing. But now because there's more tokens in supply, because Solana inflates pretty decently, right? I think it's 6% right now. Now on its market cap, even though it just crossed the per token all-time high of 265 or whatever it was, the actual market cap of this same price is 40 billion higher. Just to give you an idea of how much is actually needed to be pumped into this thing with the inflation that it has, which is kind of the big flood it's had against from the ETH camp. It's Solana inflates like crazy. You're gonna need so much more pressure to actually outpace that, which you do, but it was able to overcome that.
Love it. Big data points there on the inflation. Appreciate that, Brad. Legendary, any thoughts on Solana here and maybe allocations? I know we were speaking beforehand about how we're kind of playing out the rest of the cycle. I think you're very big in favor of denominating in Sol, at least for now. Is that how you're thinking? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I have moved a couple of times ETH to Sol, Sol to ETH, to kind of swing trade between the two of those, but I have moved, the majority is in Sol and BTC right now for me. It used to be the majority in ETH. It used to be definitely more than 90% in ETH. Now I'm actually less than 10% in ETH. So that's a shift that has happened for me over the last couple of months, but more also out of the necessity, because I am fashionably late to all of the meme coin stuff, in my opinion. So what I couldn't make up with being early, I wanted to make up with just throwing more capital at it, which is peak FOMO, which I'm very well aware of. But I just thought this is a good moment in time to do that, and also to aggressively take profits in Solana. But I'm very, very happy to move them to BTC. And because it's a cheap thing to do with the CBBTC on Solana, I actually don't mind the unit bias. I even convert less than 0.01, so less than one grand into BTC. But I do accumulate a bit of CBBTC before I take that to my cold storage on the Bitcoin network. I couldn't be bothered to do that for the small amounts, but I'm happy to collect them in wrapped BTC on Solana.
I like it. That's interesting. I think it's helpful to share some of those strategies. Interesting that you're kind of trading the pair, like Sol versus ETH, coming in and out. The only thing I wanted to check, I don't really do that a huge amount, although Brad, I was telling you the other day that I was just going to capitulate my ETH at some point. And I didn't do it in the end, and it actually rallied on that day. But I have moved more into Bitcoin over the last year or so. Not so much in Sol, so I've definitely missed that trade to some extent, although I still have a reasonable amount. But this, I think, is helpful to share from Cobie, who was kind of talking about stuff. It's cool that he's back on the timeline sharing a lot more stuff than before. And if you don't know, Cobie is probably one of the best crypto traders and investors. Always seems to call a variety of things in advance, has been very, very successful. He was just reflecting on the pairs and think, like, obviously ETH holders are down, I think, relative to other stuff. And he was just talking through his thinking for how he's thinking about Bitcoin versus gold versus in ETH versus Bitcoin. So here are a couple of things. This has come from my newsletter that just went out today. It's my 149th edition of the weekly newsletter. You can find it in my bio if you want to subscribe. The first thing he said, which was pretty bullish, was he said the other day that Bitcoin flipping gold is nothing but the restoration of sanity to our reality. The number of multiples it flips by is the more interesting question to ponder. Maybe 5 to 10x larger is approaching a fair valuation. Just looking at the assets by market cap at the moment, gold is by far and away the biggest asset by market cap, is at 17 trillion. Nvidia is second at 3.5 trillion. Apple is next at 3.4. Microsoft is at 3. Bitcoin is down at 7. Remember the other day, Bitcoin overtook silver, which is at 1.7. Bitcoin's at 1.9. It also just overtook Saudi Aramco at 1.8. So Bitcoin's working its way up, but there's still around just over an 8x gap to gap up to gold. So this is the trade that not only, I guess, Cobie's articulating here, it's also the trade that Senator Loomis wants to make, right? The people who are in charge of trying to get the strategic reserve up and running, their position is not that they want to take money and buy Bitcoin immediately. Their position is actually to start converting the gold reserves into Bitcoin because they think this is the trade that is on. So that is an interesting thing to note. The other couple of things he shared, which I thought would be helpful, is I think he basically just says that ETH is a bit lower here. And the framework for thinking about this, which I think is important, is saying that if Bitcoin is 100 or 150K, ETH doubling starts to seem easier than Bitcoin doubling to 300K. So Bitcoin to 200 or 300 is harder than ETH to 3 to 6. So that's just like one of the frameworks to think about it. But reflections, guys, what do you think? How are you thinking about stuff? Brett, are you still super chilled about it? You're just gonna have your core conviction stuff? Are you gonna make any amendments? And then Legendary to close us off.
I was literally just putting up a tweet for this because I feel like I'm seeing a confluence of events. Like it feels like it's peak grave dancing right now for a lot of ETH stuff, and I'm seeing 3 things on the timeline. One, I mentioned the punk ambition buying of like those assets. 2, TradFi FOMO, right? And TradFi FOMO only has a single other option via ETF to get exposure to, even if they don't if they feel like they missed the boat on BTC, they're just gonna, like exactly what Cobie just said, right? Boom, I'm gonna buy ETH just because it seems like the easier thing to 2x. Cool. Then you have some of the narrative stuff that is right on the tipping point of like coming back, which is the blob market shit. I know I've been fighting that stuff, but it's been saturated. It's been heavily saturated for like, I think 2 weeks now. And all it's going to take is one of these L2s to like rapidly increase in activity or FOMO, whatever, just anything, because it's literally at capacity, and blob market pricing is going to go insane. And the blob market is frankly inefficient. So a lot of these L2s are going to start lighting ETH on fire to continue to do that, which means the ultrasound narrative, like the deflation, like everything's back on the menu, like all that's going to fire back up. So I feel like there's it feels peak now, and I'm going to strap on because I feel like it's going to come, and I'm not worried about it.
There you go. Red's not worried. Legendary. I cannot hear you. I don't know what's.
Sorry. because I have so little ETH exposure to what I used to have. I mean, just to put in perspective, when I started buying my first ETH was at $11. Obviously, wasn't a lot that I was buying then, but I was buying consistently ever since. But because I now have so little ETH exposure compared to the rest of my portfolio, I have moved a good amount of ETH into memes, basically mostly base stuff, because I think there's like more upside with base to be had as well. And if some of the more mimetic plays, AI plays do work out, that is then being converted back to ETH, and ETH has pumped, which I think it will do later in the cycle. ETH, that is not so sure about my meme backs. This is where I'm more hopeful. It will pay off twice. So this is my thesis. I don't want to feel underexposed to ETH. Hence, my ETH beta plays are the memes on base that I'm trading.
I like it. I've actually made a note. I want to. The thing that I'll be looking at over the weekend is base and AI. Base X AI is the thing I want to look at. I've seen some positive stuff there. If people want to have a look over their Legendary, is there anything that's kind of caught your attention for now, just as we close out the show? What should I be looking at? I mean, we're going to talk about this after the show anyway, but while we're here, people might be interested. What's the idea?
Yeah, just Stefano commented what I wanted to say. He said bullish on virtuals. We had the founder Ethermage on one of our shows with an interview, basically AI agent launchpad. What I would look at, not necessarily to buy the token because it has pumped too much, but more from a content perspective, is exactly that AI XBT terminal that I mentioned.
It's on my list. It's on my list.
AI is posting on X. You can ask it questions in the comments. You can ask it about specific tokens. It actually gives you quite good answers. Again, that's not financial advice to buy the token. Just interacting with that thing on X can be quite helpful. It's actually doing a great job of the content.
Okay, so basically, advice is go and talk to an AI bot over the weekend.
Don't ask me to talk to the AI. It's basically the
just
end.
like, I have no advice for you. Just go and do your own research with the AI person. Okay, and the thing is, I actually take that advice and think, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense at this point in the market. All right, guys, that's been a great show. Thanks as always to Legendary and Bread for all of the contributions. That was a great conversation. I enjoyed that, and thank you so much in the audience for joining us. As always, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. That is the close of this week's show. We'll be back with you again on Monday for the rest of the week. Have a great weekend. I hope your coins go up. Take care. Bye-bye.